I want to start off saying I'm honored to be here talking today. Just showing up this morning shows that you really care about those who have fallen. Bringing your kids is even better. We need to teach the future leaders of America the sacrifice so many have made. No matter how you feel about life and society in the U.S., it's still the best place to live in the world. Ask any veteran that's deployed in this room if this country's better than where they deployed to. My guess would be you'd get a stupid look and an overwhelming yes. That'd be followed by maybe some expletives, saying that until you've been to a foreign combat zone, you have no idea how good you have it. This story assumes that we all agree today is the most hallowed of days to remember the fallen. It also assumes we all agree that men and women we have lost in combat have sacrificed more than we can ever pay them back for. I want to give you my perspective on Memorial Day. It started on February 21st, 2005 in Baghdad, Iraq, when we lost 3 soldiers. It continues to change as I get older and listen to other stories from other combat veterans. It has taken 18 years to share this day because it's hard to talk about and relive. Mainly because I've never wanted to come off as saying I did something special or for a feel bad for me moment. This is entirely the opposite. I wake up humble every day, knowing that's luck I'm here. It was a toss of a coin that Lkotka, Timmerman, or Day aren't here today talking about me. This is also just a slice of what happened. It's what I saw and what I remember. Others may have different stories from different vantage points. I didn't. The pictures that follow are all from that morning. They are a prelude to the worst day that these soldiers and their families ever had. I joined the Army National Guards when I was a junior here in Ortonville with 5 classmates. I left for basic in the summer of '96 and came back in August of my senior year. I graduated on the stage in 1997 and left for AIT 2 days later. I graduated from AIT in August of '97. I spent the next 6 years in the Ortonville Guard Unit. In 2003, I got engaged to my wonderful wife, Candace. We set a date for May 8th, 2004. We had a wonderful wedding. 6 days later, we had a guard drill. We were notified that we were being put on alert to go to Iraq in the fall. I didn't know it at the time, but this was a popular summer for weddings. Lieutenant Timmerman and Sgt Lkotka were married around the same time. Staff Sergeant Day was already married with family. While other weddings were planned, some were moved up before we left, and some I'm pretty sure were just to get the extra pay from being married. So we left for Fort Dix, New Jersey in October of 2004. After training, we shipped out to Kuwait in early December and arrived at Camp Travis, Baghdad in Iraq on December 31st, 2004. We did 2 weeks of training with the Guard unit we were replacing. After that, we're running all different missions our companies were tasked with. In February, we got great news. We were trading our old rifles in for the new M4s. Everyone looked forward to this. On February 21st, we were going to go to about 10 miles away to a rifle range at a different base. We had to zero the M4 rifles to make sure they were properly sighted in. Also, as part of that mission, Lieutenant Timmerman wanted to practice new convoy tactics. He wanted to be the gunner so he could see how it would work from a good vantage point. This was not a normal position for an officer. He was taking the most dangerous job in the vehicle to prove we could protect ourselves without harming the other drivers and civilians. This had to be done without putting his own people in more danger. We left early that morning with 4 vehicles and 15 soldiers, unaware in a short time 3 of us would be gone. We traveled on the Iraqi interstate. After 6 miles or so, the 3rd vehicle in line attempted a maneuver we had learned from the previous unit. To avoid grenades thrown off bridges, we always went under a bridge in one lane and came out in a different lane. During this maneuver, Sergeant Lkotka's Humvee rolled over. The call was put out over the radio for everyone to stop. We came to a rest next to a rolled Humvee. Sergeant Lkotka was tending to his very hurt driver. I went into the Humvee to help the gunner who was stuck in the gunner's hatch. We did a quick check to make sure he's okay and started to pull him out. The gunner was beside himself. He started telling us why he was still alive. It was because Sergeant Lkotka had remembered his training on what to do in case of a rollover. As the vehicle was skidding, Sergeant Lkotka tugged on the gunner's legs to keep him in the vehicle, then pulled him as far down in the gunner's hatch as he could to make sure he didn't get ejected. Sergeant Lkotka was a hero already that day. As we tended to the needs of those who were hurt, another Army unit was called in to help us secure the area and a helicopter for the badly injured driver. Lieutenant Timmerman got out of the gunner's hatch and switched with the normal gunner. He took up helping the hurt and doing officer tasks. Staff Sergeant Day also came from the far end of the scene. His vehicle was blocking the road and the hurt driver was one of his men. You have to remember, it's not like an accident here. In Iraq, the enemy will still try to kill you, even when you're trying to help others. So I went to the median of the interstate to pull security and wait for the helicopter. After 5 minutes or so, the helicopter was inbound, and I took a position in the other lane of traffic to protect the helicopter when it landed. I had my back to the accident scene, and the helicopter was loud and the windy from the helicopter's rotor wash. It was hard to see with all the dust. After a minute or two, there was a loud explosion behind me. I turned to look through the swirling dust and smoke. I could faintly make out a terrible scene. It was like time stood still, and the soldiers were stuck falling halfway to the ground. We lost 3 soldiers. Sergeant Sgt Lkotka, Staff Sergeant David Day, First Lieutenant Jason Timmerman. 3 others were seriously wounded, including a soldier who lost his leg. The next couple hours are a whirlwind of providing first aid, getting another medevac, providing security, and returning to base. We returned to Camp Travis. After taking care of the immediate details, we went to our barracks. I showered and sat on the steps leading into our building in a daze. There was a sidewalk that connected all the buildings together, then a sandbag wall on the other side. I have no idea how long I sat there, maybe hours. I couldn't get past that somewhere in the States, wives and families had no idea their soldiers were dead or wounded, that right now the Army was trying to find them and notify them of their loss. I couldn't stop thinking about how it should be my wife. But someone walked past. They stopped and looked at me. He asked if I was all right. It brought me back to the realm, and I shook my head. We talked for a few seconds, and he asked if I had supper yet. I told him I hadn't. He said he'd grab an extra plate of food and bring it back for me. I'll never forget that simple act. It brought humanity back to the world for me. A couple days later, we had a funeral for Lkotka, Timmerman, and Day. The U.S. ambassador spoke at the funeral. Many of the high-ranking battalion and brigade staff also came. I mostly remember the 3 rifles, with their bayonets shoved in the ground behind their combat boots. On each of the rifles hung a pair of dog tags. On top of the rifles were the helmets of the fallen. Not clean show helmets, the helmets that they were actually wearing. It made it really personal. The next day, we were going back out on missions. It was good to get back to work and get our minds at the mission on hand. We carried on for another 8 months. In that time, there was good and bad missions. It's impossible to know the toll it took on the individual soldier. No 2 people ever saw the same thing or experienced the same feelings. The only time during missions that genuinely made the soldiers happy was handing out food and toys to the local kids. It was an experience that made both sides happy and smile. We had the best coming home ceremony when we got back. One of the highlights of my life was sitting in the Morris Armory at the homecoming ceremony and hearing everyone clapping and stomping. It shook your whole body. After it was over, I thought about the families of soldiers we lost and how bittersweet the feeling it must have been for them to watch. And so life went on. There were hard years for me and others, trying to deal with everything that happened on that tour and adjust back to family life. When life was hard, I always told myself, at least I'm here. Lkotka, Timmerman, and Day would trade my worst day just to have one more. 14 years ago, I went to Green Valley looking for Jason Timmerman's grave. I had no idea where the cemetery was. Luckily, the town turned out to be really small, and I found the cemetery a few miles out of town. As I walked around looking for his headstone, it was like looking for a friend in a crowd. After I found it, I stayed for a while and thanked him for taking my place. I left and would come back every year or so, sometimes on Memorial Day, sometimes in the winter. 6 years ago, I decided it was finally time to come to this Memorial Day program. I couldn't put my finger on why. It just didn't feel right before that. Then I came to the realization why. I remember those guys and some of those horrors of that deployment almost every day. Those memories are like a Memorial Day to me every day. Some days are good and some days are bad. Today, I believe all those experiences have changed me to become a better person. I don't believe we should just remember the fallen soldiers on Memorial Day. If we learn to follow what Lkotka, Timmerman, and Day stood for and sacrificed for, we'll be better people. Better people make better families, better neighbors, better towns, and better countries. Here are 3 ideas I want everyone to think about today. The first one: when it's your time, it's your time. It very well could have been me or any of the other soldiers on that mission that died instead. Let your loved ones know how you feel about them. Kiss and hug them every day. You never know when you won't see them again. The fallen never had a chance for just one more time. The second one: be kind to those you know are struggling. It can be active military servicemen, veterans, family members, or just someone off the street. I will never forget the kindness of the soldier that brought me a plate of food as I was staring into that sandbag wall on my steps. On Memorial Day, we need to remember all the families and friends that lost loved ones. Some days it's hard to be a survivor too. When you see someone that looks off or has a look of being lost, stop and just say hi. A small action can really dig someone out of an ugly place. The third one: the fallen gave up their lives to try bringing the belief of freedom and better lives all around the world. Lieutenant Timmerman was risking his life in the gunner's hatch that day to protect Iraqi civilians from being hurt. He didn't know any of them. They weren't from the same country, and some of them were even trying to kill us. He wanted to make Iraq as good a place as he could and help the Iraqi people. Staff Sergeant Day was a police officer in a civilian life. He protected all people, no matter which continent they lived on. In all of the fallen's honor, make the place where you live a better place. We saw the fields of trash and the kids that were starving. We also saw the ruthlessness of the insurgents. If the fallen could have come home alive, they would have fought for the same things here, too. Continue their ideals. Volunteer. It can be at a church, food shelves, giving rides, fire department, EMS, coaching sports, or a council. The options are endless. Keep their spirit alive by helping others. If everyone does just a little extra for their fellow human, we can continue their legacy every day.
Thank you.